we may have a situation where we've got the radiator suddenly gone cold. It worked last year or in the winter, and now it's autumn time, switch the heating on, and all of a sudden it's not working. Well, it could be because somebody's put the valve here, the sensor, onto snowflake or number 1 or number 2, and that effect it pushes a rod down into a piston and closes off the valve, and the radiator will go cold. The trouble is, we don't recommend that in any shape or form. All you're going to do is create a couple of problems. One, that room will go damp and smelly, which is not acceptable. And two, by turning off this radiator, you increase the pressure of the other ones, and the pump doesn't like high pressure. And especially if you haven't got an automatic bypass, that will definitely have an adverse effect, and you'll start getting sludge. And in a sealed system, that shouldn't happen. So what we can do is this: we can turn the valve onto full, press the green eco button in, and then remove the sensor by just undoing the nut. It should only be finger tight, so there's no need to use any tools. So we'll just undo that and put it out the way. And then I found WD-40 is possibly the best thing, but the one with the spout. And what we're going to do here, don't touch it, just spray WD around this spindle. Obviously we're going to have kitchen roll or some sort of paper around there to absorb it, and then just let that work in for a second or two. This is not a rush job. And then all we can do then is to just gently see if we can just push it down. Just push it down a little bit to get that WD further, and then maybe put a drop more. And then push this down a bit further and see if the spring doesn't pop back into place. Hopefully with the sensor off, because remember, these are air sensors, so there's no air sensor here. It should now pop up and the heat should now go through. Another method that you could do is maybe turn off all of the other radiators and just leave this one and maybe a large one or something. Just turn all the other ones off and just make this one the focal point. So the pump has to go through here. That heat sometimes may dislodge the stuck spring, which is the problem. But remember, if you've got it here, you may have it other way. So always avoid turning off these TRVs into snowflake or 1 or 2. 3 would be the minimum I would leave it on. You need heat in a room. Finally, another tip is do not pull that pin out, because a lot of TRVs, that holds a piston, and if you remove the spindle, the piston will then shoot up and then water will go from here and hit the ceiling. No problem at all, because this is high pressure. This is 1 bar or even higher. So don't be tempted to lift that up or anything else. What you could do is to just give it maybe a sharp tap a couple of times, maybe a bit more of WD-40, etc., and see if that doesn't make the spring pop back into life. And hopefully 9 times out of 10, that's all it needs. And if you're doing this one, you might as well do all of the other radiator valves that have got TRVs on, because they'll have the same problem, because they're all the same age, as we always say. So don't just go one and think all the others will be brilliant for years. You'd be mistaken. So I hope this has given you some hints and tips on thermostatic radiator valves, and this repair is a very easy one, doesn't need an expert at all, just a little bit of sequence, and this video will show you and has shown you exactly what to do. So thanks for watching. In this video, I like to cover a lot of faults and problems with radiators, valves, zone valves, all those faults that I've been hearing for years. And many moons ago, on our local BBC station, which is called Three Counties, 3CR, we had a Saturday morning expert, Ask the Experts, and there'd be somebody that was a skilled car mechanic, a photographer, and I used to do plumbing and heating. And occasionally, if somebody does have a problem on plumbing and heating, today we have a consumer program, and occasionally, when it's possible, I'll phone in, or they'll phone me, and we solve the problems. So what I've written here are basically 25 of the most popular faults that keep occurring and occurring. So hopefully finally we can get some heating systems fixed, and most of this is in my fault finding book, the yellow book here, for installers, engineers, or whoever is involved in repairing and fixing radiators and heating systems. So that's what the book is designed for. It's all faults, etc, etc. So let's go through a few of these there. So question one is, why are my radiators getting hot when the heating is off? Well, the answer could be that the diverter valve is stuck in the on position because it's full of muck and rubbish. Now, when we look at, this is a zone valve. When we drain down, always remember that on the side of all of these valves, there's a lever. And I can show you a bit of close up there, you can see it. So before you drain down a system, you need to move the lever across and then attach it to the end, and it'll stay open. And I can show you again on this downforce zone valve, it's closed, and we move the lever across here, put it into place. It's spring loaded, it wants to close, but now it's in the open position. We can drain the system down or fill it up, and that allows the air bubbles. So this is a very common fault, why heating systems don't switch off, because either this is now goes halfway and it stops because the body here is seized up. You can just see that, and it spins half a turn, quarter turn, whatever it needs to do, and that's the reason why. Also, it could be that the programmer is faulty. Sometimes they don't switch off, etc. Or maybe the room thermostat is on too high, and you think, oh, it should have gone off, but there's it's still working and working. Another reason why you may think it's working is at the end of the day, for example 11 o'clock, the heating switch is off, but the boiler is still very hot, and that latent heat has to be dissipated through the bypass to the boiler, or it dumps on the radiators. And therefore you might have the effect of thinking, oh, my radiators are on and it's 11:15. No, it's just cooling down. So there's lots of little problems that could arise from that. Next one, is it cheaper to have the heating on all the time? No, only when you're home. Most systems should warm up within 20 minutes. Half an hour would be a large Victorian house, but a normal 3-bedroom semi should reach temperature in 15 to 20 minutes. So if it's taking longer than that, then you need to look at insulation, or maybe the boiler's not man enough anymore, maybe the radiators are too small. But basically, when you're in, switch the heating on. If you have smart controls, which is what we always recommend, then you can switch it on, let's say at the railway station, bus station, and by the time you get house, then it's already quite warm and the rest of it will take care of itself. No one's going to freeze. Within 15 minutes it'll be fine. So having smart controls, that's really good, because then you can control it exactly. But definitely don't leave the heating on 24 hours of the day, or even from 7:30 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. Even if you're in and housebound, have those off periods. Another question here is, what if no water comes out the bleeding radiator screws? So if we have our vent plug, it's on that side on this particular one, it could be that the tank in the loft has run out of water and you can't fill it up, or the filling loop is closed off. Look at the gauge. If you've got a Combi system, look at the gauge and see if it's on 0. Top it up the way the factory tells you to. So there's lots of different ways of filling up a heating system. But basically, if you've got a tank in the loft, it's easily possible that the water has drained down from the tank, but the ball valve is still stuck in mid-air, as it were, and it needs a tap. Basically, it needs replacing, because we can't have a ball valve that decides to stick sometimes and other times. But at least if you tap it, and that should get the water running straight down into the systems. Why is my boiler not heating the radiators? Well, that could be either the room thermostat is too low, or it could be that the programmer is in the off position. And when I go around factories, sometimes they let me go to the call center, and I always ask two questions. One is, what's the fault that most installers make? And the answer to that is undersized gas pipe. And the other question is, what's the biggest complaint customers have about their heating system? And the answer is always, we don't know how to use the controls. The installer says, here's your room stat, here's your programmer, goodbye. And quite often the program setting has been tried to be enabled, and somebody's made a mess because they haven't really been taught correctly, and they don't press the reset button because they've all got one, and so the heating system is wild. So in that particular case, there's always an option of constant, and then turn it down by the room thermostat, and that'll bring you back into line, and then ask for help from whoever makes the programmer. So that's the reason why some heating systems won't switch on when it should do, and also they don't switch off when they should be. It could be the program is out of sync and just wants resetting. Number 5 here, radiators are hot downstairs but cold upstairs. That's because you've got an airlock in the system between downstairs and upstairs. It could be that the filling, if it's a Combi system, shouldn't really happen because you've got mains pressure, which is very strong. So that water will go through, but you could have some muck and rubbish in the pipework from upstairs to downstairs, and that's why it's not filling correctly. And the same thing with tanks in the loft. There's an airlock, there's a pipe going upwards instead of downwards, and therefore when it drains down it's fine, but when you come to fill it up it won't go. It won't go because the pipe is facing down instead of upwards to allow the air bubbles to escape. Why do you feel stuck? How do you free a stuck diverter valve? That's easy. So we've got a stuck diverter valve here, goes halfway. All you do is what I said earlier, move it right over to the end and then hook it on so the pin stays in the open position, and that allows the water to go through. And if this continues, replace the whole valve. Don't change the motor, don't change the head, change the whole unit. Always we say this, never ever just do those two bits. This comes as a unit, please replace. If there's 2 of these or 3 of these, replace them all because they'll all be at the same age. Turning off the heat at night to save money, yes, definitely. The normal temperatures that we say is that put the house into about 18 degrees. So it should, the thermostat normally is in the lounge. That's the best place for it. Set it back to 18 and then leave that overnight, and that'll be fine, because any lower than that the room's going to get cold and too cold, and materials, your settees, etc., and the carpets, if you got some, they'll start going a bit smelly. So we don't want to be too cold, etc. So that's an easy one. Overnight 18 degrees. Does turning off the heat at night save money? We've done that one. What's the cheapest way to heat the home? Buy the latest condensing boiler and smart controls from the boiler manufacturer. So if you buy a Worcester boiler, use Worcester controls. Valent boiler, Valent controls. They all make top of the range. That's the cheapest way of heating your home. By far. The older the boiler, the more expensive it is. Even though it costs money to upgrade, this is money well spent, because these boilers are going to be in your house for at least 10, 12, 14 years. So that's going to be a huge amount of money to be made by the fuel supplier, your energy supplier. So you want to make sure that the bills are as low as possible. Buy a new boiler with the smart controls. cheapest way to heat a home, condensing. Where can I find the trusted installer? There are a couple of websites, but the number one place I've always advised customer is to go to the factory website. And I've got some cutaways here on Worcester, for example. Most of them, if not all, will have a local hero. It'll be one person, or maybe a small firm, maybe a large firm. But to get onto a factory website, not only have to be brilliant gas safe engineers, but they have to be specialists in that manufacturer. So if I have a Worcester boiler, I'm going to have either a Worcester engineer come from the factory or a highly trained Worcester recommended one approved. And this goes across the industry. It's not just Worcester, it's all the other makes. So that's the best place. You can trust that engineer. They'll be brilliant. Next thing. Where can I find it now? Pump runs after the heating off. As I said earlier, at 11 o'clock the heating switch is off and the pump overrun kicks in, and that can last half an hour, maybe a little bit longer. It just depends how the system has been designed and whether they used an automatic bypass or not at the boiler. So it can cool down gently, which is crucial. Otherwise you're going to get pinking, crashing and banging, and that's not good at all. What do you do if you call who do you call if the boiler doesn't work? Call the factory. There's a sticky label or a badge on the boiler. Phone them up first. Tell them the make, if you can tell the model or anything you can say, or the badge, anything information you can give to them and say, this is not happening, or the boiler's just dead, there's nothing on the display at all, and follow their advice. So it might be a simple thing that the fuse is popped, or it could be something more serious. Maybe the water has run out, but they'll go through. They have a template, and they'll be able to fix it. Always the best place. Right, let's carry on. What have we got here? Okay, does turning off the rad save money? No, definitely not. It's not going to save you a penny. This is a myth. If I turn this bedroom 3 radiator off, am I going to save any money? No, you won't save a penny. You will increase the pressure on a Combi boiler. That'll upset the pump, and now you're going to pay for maybe a pump burning out sooner, and it will create sludge. So don't turn any radiators off at all. You have to remember that your direct debit, if you pay by direct debit, as most of us do, is made out from last year's consumption. So for example, you were paying £50 a month for gas and £50 for electricity. Your direct debit is going to be £100 a month. They'll multiply that by 12 and then they'll divide it by 12, and then that's your monthly direct debit, and they may add on 10%. So when you are swapping, because we have to, every year, we have to keep re-looking for new suppliers. And remember, we're only changing the accounts department. The gas comes from somebody else, and they buy that gas at one price. Another fuel supplier will buy exactly the same gas, but at a higher price or a lower price. And we have to do the same thing every year, is to find who's got the cheapest one, which is time consuming. Really, it's a waste of time, but that's the way the system is. So by turning off a radiator, you won't save a single penny, because it's been determined last year. And then moving on from that, when your contract ends, add 10%, because they'll say, oh, last year you used £65 worth of gas and maybe £50 of electricity, whatever it is. When you look and go into a search engine there, one of these companies that will find you the cheapest supplier, add 10% of this year's usage, and then you'll be within that boundary. But I will do another video about how to save money on gas or fuel, etc., etc. So that's a really good one. That's in the pipelines, and I'll show you some really clever ways of how you can save an awful lot of money. But we're going to concentrate on this, right? So why is the radiator cold across the top? That's air So to remove air, we have to turn off the pump and the boiler, because the pump will create air. So we want everything to be stagnant. And then with some kitchen towel, we go to the valve, gently open. As soon as it coughs and splutters, just gently turn the valve back off, and that will fill up to here. Then switch the boiler heating back on, and it'll level itself out. But don't forget, if it's a combi boiler, make sure that you've got about 1 bar pressure in a 3-bedroom semi or lower, yeah, or 1.4 if it's a bigger one. If you've got tanks in the loft, you don't do nothing because it's all automatic. So that's cold air across the top. Next one, cold air across the bottom. So you got all this is cold. That's lovely and hot. This is cold. That's going to be sludge. So sludge is this. Okay, sludge is where we've got black oxide all over the place down here. You've got a mountain of that. This black stuff is dangerous. It's carcinogenic. If you touch that with your hands and you've got a cut in your hands, nothing good is going to happen. Sludge comes from the pump, and the system is at high pressure. That's one way. So that's an easily solvable job by the installer who didn't do it correctly. The other thing that goes hand in hand with this or another system is they've not put any inhibitor, or not enough. These small bottles of liquid, if we've got one here, where is it here? There we are. These small bottles here, this is F2. When the system is first filled up, we put F1 inhibitor or X100 on a different make, and that protects all the pipes, etc. Because we've got steel, we've got copper, we've got maybe aluminium in the boiler, we've got all sorts of different metals, and the water will start to clean and very slowly disintegrate some of the loose bits and pieces from the cast iron or the steel or wherever. And that water is the catalyst that causes sludge. So that's the reason why we always say to engineers, put plenty. Overdose is better than no dose, and this doesn't happen. This country, or United Kingdom, is famous in Europe as having been the #1 worst heating systems across the 27 or whatever countries. We have the worst systems at all because we don't do these jobs as a standard. Installers keep skimping for some reason, and this is compulsory. It's good for the system, and it's so cheap. These bottles are just £15 a pop, so it's not a lot of money, but sludge can ruin a radiator very easily, and you have to be careful in removing that. So you might need professional advice how to tackle the problem. But that's when it's cold here and hot up here. Is a magnetic filter good for the Combi system or any system at all? It's compulsory. As far as I'm concerned, every single system that we install, I have 2 installers because I'm off the tools, Chris and Stuart, and they do all of my work and their work. And we automatically put a MagnaClean on and make sure that it works. And sometimes we can pour the inhibitor into there, or we pump it into the radiator or somewhere. But yes, every Combi system, every boiler system should have a magnetic filter on the return pipe, so it protects the boiler and all the rubbish comes out. And I've got a close-up here which I've used on another film where you can see that oxide, instead of going in the boiler and ruining it, I've drained it off and put it into the bucket. So here's a picture of that one. Is an anti-scale filter any good? Definitely yes. It'll be also part of the guarantee from the manufacturer that it helps to fight the impurities of fresh water coming in, because that's poisonous to radiators. Radi is like oily type of liquid, which the inhibitor does for it. So yes, definitely. Oh, that's my book gone. boilers like an anti-scale device and your manufacturer's guarantee might be 5, 6 or even 10 years of age. And if you don't fit a magnet cleaning type of thing on the return and an anti-scale device, they may say, well, you've not conformed with the terms and conditions, your guarantee has been cancelled and you're going to pay hundreds of pounds to get this boiler fixed. So it's better in than not in. And it's good, they work. So make sure that if you've got a Combi system, you've got one, both of them, and if you've got an ordinary system, again, there's one that could protect the whole house. So shop around, take advice to see which is the best one for you. Are chemicals good? Yes, of course, we just covered that. When it's filled, it's number 1 inhibitor. After a few years, we use silencer F2 or X200. Warm rads, not very hot, so we might get all of them not as hot as they should be. That could be a worn out pump, so have a look. If the pump is around 6, 7 or 8 years of age, that could be a good reason to upgrade. And nowadays, companies, for example, Grundfos, which we love, they have an app. So it's very easy for me to replace what's in the boiler or in the system to the latest version, and they're going to be much better, much stronger. That could be a reason. It could be the boiler thermostat has now gone faulty and it'll give you a blanket lower temperature than it has been. So you turn it up and up and up, but it doesn't go past that sort of hot settings instead of very hot settings. So a boiler thermostat quite often can be the problem. It could also be the room thermostat. Same again, they're only overheat thermostats. You have to remember these things here, they only work when it's hot. They don't work in cold places. They're overheat. They stop the boiler and the house overheating and wasting money. Here's another graph here, and you can see that these ones, they overshoot by at least 3 degrees. So you'll dial 20 degrees, but it won't stop working until it reaches 22, 23, 24 degrees. And we're paying for that every time that the boiler kicks in. The thermostat will demand that. So if you still got one of these, then and it's more than 6 years of age, the best thing to do is simply upgrade to a digital one. This is a Danfoss one. All the manufacturers, Drayton, Honeywell, they all make a digital thermostat. They only need 2 wires and they save a fortune. This is what makes your bill, nothing else. The clock only switches on and off. This says high bill or low bill. So this is the one that we encourage installers to upgrade houses. So if you've got one of the old dialy thingies, time to move on, and this will save you money. Right, what else have we got? Radiators across the bottom, we've covered. Best way to heat a bathroom. Yes, we get a lot of problems in the bathroom. Naturally, it's going to be condensation. Lesser in the kitchen, for example, because we're used to that. So let's look at the bathroom first. What's the best way to heat a bathroom? Well, it's always been the towel rail. Now, the towel rail should be 600 mil across and 1800. So 3 times higher, 1800 towel rail is too large for a bathroom in normal way, which is what we want. But we also want a little bit of air movement. So an extractor fan that is situated over the bath or over the shower is obviously going to be hand in hand, because we need to suck that moisture out into the atmosphere. So we want one that overruns. So when you turn off the light, because I always recommend, have the electrician, has to be a registered approved electrician, and have them wire the fan to the light switch. But when you turn the light off, the fan runs for another 5 minutes or 7 minutes. You can have them also extractor fans that work on moisture, so you can run as long as it takes. Also, a good idea is if you open the window, if you've got a window, because sometimes we've got blind bathrooms, but if you've got a window, open it just a little bit. Double glazed windows have an effect where you can sort of move it and lock it down into place, and you've still got a sort of a draft coming through. That's brilliant. So don't open the window wide, because you're just going to cool the place down. Cooling it down makes more condensation. We want heat. It's heat and air, a slight air movement. And have a look at my other video on YouTube where I'm talking about condensation and how to solve it. What have we got next? Rads hot, balancing systems, right? Warm rads, not hot. That could be the TRV, if it's down here or something. It could be it's just stuck. And in my other videos, number 1, 2, 3, 4, I've covered all of those. So basically, it could be that this wants replacing for a new one, or the whole lot wants replacing, because they'll be the same age. Right, what have we got left? The lounge never gets hot enough, or one of the rooms never gets hot enough, etc. And that's probably due because it's too small for that house, or that room rather. So a good thing is that we make an app called Heat Loss Calculator, and you can put in the dimensions, slightly oversize it so you've got a bigger room, slightly bigger room than it really is. So having a larger radiator is cheaper to run, because that surface area is heated by water, and if you have a larger surface area, it'll still warm up the room, but the temperature will be lower, and therefore that works better in efficiency. But if the radiator is too small, it's never going to be hot. So what will happen is the customer will turn the boiler up, the room thermostat up, and the radiator you can fry an egg on, and it'll never keep up with the heat loss, because the heating loses most through walls. People think it's through windows, but it's not. It's the walls. It'll go straight through that. It's to do with surface area. And in any given room, on average, the window occupies a smaller space in that room than all of the walls, which might have 2 outside walls. And it will simply go whoosh straight through it. So having double glazing helps in the window side. Having thick curtains helps the heat loss. Don't cover the radiator with settees or curtains or anything. Get that heat to come into the room. When it comes down to wall, then if it's got a cavity, by this day and age, all of them should have been done. So there's lots of grants and money available for cavity wall insulation, because the government and the industry know that's the biggest troublemaker when it comes to heat loss. So if you've got a cold room, have a look at that. The lofts are automatically done, but obviously again, that should have been insulated or boarded or whatever to stop the heat going up. But that's less of a problem, unbelievably, than the walls are and the windows. So I hope there's a few faults here that I've covered, and you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and have a look at some of my other helps and tips, and I've got a couple in the pipeline, as I said earlier, all about saving money on gas bills or oil bills on the heating side to do. So look out for that one coming shortly. So subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, and take care.